Daddy, nobody at Bishop Moore's working over Christmas. And I go, that's just not true. Daddy, yes, it is. And I go, listen, here's why it's not true. You two motherfuckers are working.
All right, before we begin, let's thank our great sponsors, and we've got some good sponsors. Now, remember, if you would like to be a part of the process, I would love to have a conversation with you. Sponsoring the BPX, the Bailey Podcast Exchange, just reach out to me via jasonbailey.com. Let's start. Inspect All Pest Services. Inspect All Pest Services, providing the highest quality termite, pest, and wildlife control. That's not all they do. Inspect All can take care of your insulation, your pressure washing, your gutter maintenance, and other home services there in the metro Atlanta and the surrounding areas. InspectAllServices.com. Also, thanks to Inspect All Pest Services for sponsoring all of our guests on the BPX. The Mad Dog, Manny Aurora with the Aurora Law Firm, theauroralawfirm.com. Best damn defense attorney in the land. He litigates all over the United States, based out of Georgia. Criminal defense, white-collar crime, DUI, drug offenses, appeals, and more. Theauroralawfirm.com. And if you have a legal question for the Mad Dog when he visits the BS, please go to jasonbailey.com and get that to me now. It's Ridgeline Counseling with Dr. David Markwell. If you need help, get help. He's got 10 therapists who work with him there at Ridgeline Counseling, 3 different locations in the state of Georgia, one across from Sprayberry High School in Sandy Plains, in East Cobb, Marietta right there near the square, and McKaysville outside of Blue Ridge. But if you're not in those areas and you still need help from the best in the business, that'd be Dr. David Markwell with Ridgeline Counseling. He does virtual sessions, which are extremely helpful, and you can set that appointment up at markwelltherapy.com. Alternate Power Solutions of Georgia, family owned and operated. They are a Generac generator dealer, offering sales, service, installation, and repair of automatic home standby and portable generators. And each and every one of you, 2 peers, when you become a customer, you get an upgraded warranty, free monitoring with a service contract, offering flexible financing, semi-annual and annual service contracts for existing installations and warranty repair. They have an A+ rating with the BBB, and you pay nothing until the job is complete, and you, the customer, are very, very happy. Call or request a free home assessment. You can go online, poweringgeorgia.com, or you can call 770-853-7571. Don't forget, use the discount code Bailey, and you get $500 off your entire installation. Servicing Georgia and Tennessee. MVP Walk-In Tub and Shower of Atlanta. Beautiful, affordable bathing solutions. MVP Walk-In Tub and Shower. They're a local family-owned and operated company committed to enhancing your bathroom experience in Metro Atlanta. They provide high-quality, safe, and affordable walk-in tubs and showers, focusing solely on installations that elevate your home's comfort and accessibility. They service all of Atlanta, Georgia. Like I said, family-owned and operated, no commission sales guys. There's no hassle when you deal with MVP Walk-In Tub and Shower of Atlanta. No high-pressure tactics. Go to their website and see the work that they're doing. Gen Xers, having them parents finally move in, and you're going to help them out, and you got to redo all that. Don't do it yourself. Go with the best in the business. These are the pros. MVPWalk-ins.com. Or you can call 404-493-6888. Mention the BPX, get $2,000 off. Again, mention the Bailey Podcast Exchange, BPX, or any of the shows, and you will receive $2,000 off from MVP Walk-In Tub and Shower of Atlanta. Alive Ozone Therapy Spa, Central Florida's first and only ozone therapy spa, administering ozone therapy or activated oxygen therapy non-invasively through what is called the Hocket sauna. Also offering red light therapy, halo therapy, pressotherapy, PEMF, as well as naturally in-house made ozone-infused products online, like that magnesium butter. AliveOzoneTherapySpa.com to book your appointment or to shop all of the products for Alive Ozone Therapy Spa, as well as the brand new Alive Ozone Therapy Spa app. If you are an Apple user, go into your app store and just search Alive Ozone Therapy Spa. If you're an Android user, search Alive Ozone Therapy Spa, order and book online. Again, if you are a business and you want the BPX, the Bailey Podcast Exchange, to help your brand, there's so much more than just advertising when it comes to this world. I'd like to have that conversation with you. Reach out to me, please, via jasonbailey.com, and let's chat. With that being said, let's begin.
Hey, good looking. It's the Bailey Show podcast. jasonbailey.com. It's a website.
All right, there it is. Episode 440 of the Bailey Show podcast. It's a guy's show women love to listen to with a side of ass. Thanks for being here. On the BPX. This is the Bailey Podcast Exchange. 3 different shows, 5 days a week. One feed, preferably Spotify. JasonBailey.com. I was going through that with Scott Bartlett of Saving Abel the other day. He was on the Vinyl Road podcast with me and Brad Stewart.
Good looking guy.
You guys are doppelgangers, like the way you look, the way you talk, the way you sound, your thought process. It's your long lost brother from another mother. I'm telling you that right now. But he was very active in sharing the podcast. And I don't think I've ever been through this before where there's been a guest that has been so willing to help share the podcast. So he was trying to, he was doing something to try to share it. And then he was going to boost it on Facebook. Like that's going over and beyond, right?
Yeah. And
so he couldn't do it. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And he's not the most tech savvy guy in the world. And so I was like, well, just, so I sent him the link for the Spotify episode. I think he was trying to share, then boost, and do all kinds of weird. I don't know. It's like, just take it and make a post, so that's what he did. And like the plays for that episode compared to like prior episodes are like 3 times as much. So thank you, wow. Scott Bartlett of Saving Abel, one of the Saving Abels. Appreciate it. But anyway, JasonBailey.com. You can get all of our great sponsors. If you'd like to be a sponsor, sign up for the newsletter. There's information there as well. Ask Manny. You can ask your question there. We'll get it answered on an upcoming episode of the Mad Dog Manny Aurora, the Aurora Law Firm. Merchandise, holiday season, all kinds of good stuff. JasonBailey.com. All right. Thanks for being here. My name's Jason Bailey right there. That is Bald Badger. Benjamin.
Hey!
We should, if all goes well, have a very special guest, somebody you didn't see coming on this show, because I didn't see coming ever on this show, which is very exciting because I go way back with this gentleman. I don't know if he'll remember or not, but I will tell you this. I think Forbes listed him as worth $1.5 billion now. That's his net worth. Yeah. I saw him on a video with that kid for the School of Hard Knocks that goes around and interviews millionaires and billionaires. Right. And he interviewed our potential guest. And he goes, when did you make your first million, or how much you worth? Something like that. He goes, well, according to Forbes, I'm worth over $1 billion. Like, wouldn't that be nice to have so much money? You need somebody else to tell you how much you're worth.
Can y'all verify? I'm clueless. I'll pay you for it.
That's when you've made it, when somebody else needs to tell you how much money you're worth. That's the good stuff right there. So let's hope and pray that all happens here within the next 15 minutes. Sometimes I don't like to set up the guests if they don't come on, and it's a letdown, but that's my tipping my foot in the shallow end of the pool to tease you for the guest, even though I really don't need to do that because you read the summary and it says it right there. I don't know why I do that. That's my radio mind.
Well, the summary won't happen until after the fact. So then you'll know.
Yeah, right. What I'm saying is, like, when people go and they see the summary, they're like, oh, I'm listening to this right now. There's no need to tease me. I see that it's on here. That's why I came here to listen, is because it's on the summary.
I see.
You see what I'm saying? But on the flip side of that is what I've learned is not a lot of people read the summaries. People, they don't even realize that some of these social snaps that are 60 seconds, they think those are the whole podcast.
Well, and if something were to possibly happen and said guest doesn't show up, then you just leave that shit out of the summary and they never know the wiser.
And I just got a message from him and he says he's going to be on in a few minutes.
Yay!
He might even be on here early, which is fantastic. I don't know how much of this story I'll be able to get into. So I'll save it maybe for tomorrow's released episode. But I will ask you this while we wait. Okay. Yep. At what age, because the gentleman that we're going to have on, he's a self-made man. And he got to the point by working hard. I know that for a fact. But at what age is too late in your life to where you look back and say, I'm not going to be able to achieve that. I'm going to have to find a different direction
God.
in order to achieve whatever.
That's such a tough question, man.
Mm.
I guess it all depends on what your achievement is. If it's something physical and you're beyond your physical capability to accomplish what your goal was, like
Mhm.
at this point in my life, I can say I'm past the point of going to the Olympics for any sport.
Okay. So, all right, my bad. I'm talking more career wise. Okay.
Okay, I mean, again, if it's not a physically limiting choice, death.
Okay.
That's
So
the age.
you take it all the way up to the end.
Man, if you got it in you and you have the potential to still activate, then damn it, do it. It's okay.
Yeah. It's almost though the argument, the no quit. I love that. And I'm a fan and I buy into it, but you don't want to be the guy that dies and people at your funeral say, man, he was trying to, you know, really push this new game, jump to conclusions. It just never really took off. But he died trying. And, like, I don't know what's worse, is that not accomplishing anything or die trying to accomplish something big. There's a reason why I'm asking this, by the way.
Well, okay, in my opinion, what's worse is to not try.
Yeah.
Period. I don't care if you fail. Failure is part of learning. But if you just give up for fear of what somebody's going to say after you die because you didn't accomplish what you were trying for, maybe all you were doing was setting the table for the next person to pick it up and finish that thing.
But there's part of that where you have to pivot if something's not working,
Why?
like, because your plan isn't work. I mean, it happens all the time. Take Netflix, Blockbuster, for example, right? I mean, when most people know the story, when Netflix went to go to sell to Blockbuster, Blockbuster laughed at them. I think the line in the meeting literally was, this .com thing is a phase. And Netflix was partially owned, I believe, by Blockbuster at the time, at least the players, and they were bleeding money, just bleeding money. They had to pivot. He didn't give up,
right?
But he had to pivot. That's what I'm saying.
Sure, yeah, you can pivot. I mean, if you keep trying to do the same thing, well, that's the definition of insanity. But if you're willing to chase and pivot and evolve, there's no need to ever quit chasing your passion.
So the reason I'm bringing this up is I do believe that there is a shelf life of pivoting. And I had this conversation with my son the other day when he was over for the holiday, for Turkey Day and stuff, is that he's going to be 25 in April. And Caleb is an extremely intelligent young man. He rides the spectrum, but I know how he thinks. He and I think a lot alike as far as black and white. And we try to look at things in, for the most part, simplistic terms. But there's a generation difference between myself and his generation. Big generation difference. Yeah. Work ethic generation difference. Big, huge. So he has, since he graduated high school, been working all these jobs. I mean, he'll do anything, right? But it doesn't last for very long. Like, he'll work at Journeys in the mall. And I was all excited. I don't know if you guys remember that episode. He was like assistant manager. He's getting, salary and all that. I don't even know what happened to the job. Like, after I did this whole thing on the show about how excited and proud I was of him, found out he was working somewhere else, so I don't know what happens. I don't know why. And he's going to be 25 soon. And he's got two jobs. And one of them's at like a convenience store. And I'm not knocking these jobs per se for people, but I do believe that at a young age, you should work towards a career. You don't want to spend rich. You want to save poor, meaning you don't want to be the person that lives off the tips out of your purse. And then when that cash is done, you go back to work. You want to live off the money that you're earning off the money that you've saved in your bank account. So that's, in my opinion, part of financial success. He's living cash out of purse kind of thing. And then he just goes back to work. So I fought when Fox one time, and she was talking about the post office, she was like, they're hiring. And this is not, I was like, God, that'd be great for him. That'd be perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect
that
job.
conversation.
Government job, benefits, good money. You can work your way up the ladder. It's not overly exerting. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work at the post office, so everything kind of checks off all the boxes there. And he hadn't gone after it. Fox sent me the link to send to him. I mean, he didn't do anything with it. So I finally sat him down and I got angry. I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I go, I'm sick of hearing, like, I got to step in. This is where the dad thing comes into play. I go, I can't be the parent, that this new age parent that just sits back and goes, well, they'll figure it out. Let's just wait to see what happens. I'm sure everything is going to be fine. There comes a point where we have to say enough is enough. And I'm done with this new age conforming bullshit and your rules and what you think work. I'm going to go by what I know works. And that's something from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. Okay. And if you don't like it, suck my toes, right? It's just, that's what we're going to do. So that's kind of where I'm at with both of my kids, both Caleb and Ariel. Ariel's a totally different story. But so I said, Caleb, I go, I think I know why you take these jobs. And he goes, why do you think that is? And I said, I think you take these jobs because you want time to play video games. And these jobs aren't your primary. They're just convenient for you to not get in the way with your life.
Which a convenience store would be perfect for that.
Right.
It says it right there in the name.
It's convenient. And he agreed with me. I was shocked. He said he was absolutely spot on. I go, Caleb, that tells me you're lazy. I said, that's what it tells me. It tells me you're lazy. I go, here's the problem. I go, you're missing the point of no return. Like, you're almost 25. You have nothing to show for it as far as advancement in a career. Like, you've missed 4 years, give or take, of possibly doing something that would help you and your fiance the rest of your lives, whether it's going to a trade school, becoming an electrician, HVAC, whatever the case may be. You've just been working these odd jobs. And I said, let me tell you something. If you ever go to a real job and you present to them your resume and it looks like a CVS receipt, and you're like, dude, look at all these jobs that I've done, that's to my benefit. That's the total opposite, because there's only 2 reasons why someone would have so many jobs in such a short period of time. They get fired, they're hard to get along with, or they're not loyal and they quit. There's no other reason. I said, so when they ask you why, you're going to have to eat some crow, and you say to them, I'm still trying to figure myself out and where my place in the world is. But I think, actually, I know this job right now is it. That's going to be your response when that company asks you that question. Am I wrong?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
So Rach and I kind of see a little bit different on this. She thinks, she's like, they'll figure it out. It'll be fine. They're going to be okay. I'm like, no, they're not, because it's going to be like, here's the bigger problem is that when they need money, they're going to come to us and we're going to have to give it to them. Like, that's the bigger problem. It's not
luckily you're good with money, Bailey.
Yeah. I'm good with money for me, not good for money for them. I want my money. I don't want to give my money to them when they're not willing, but when they're capable of getting their own money. I don't want that responsibility anymore. I shouldn't have that responsibility anymore. It's not my job. They're adults. Figure it out. You know what I mean? But there's that work ethic, I think, and it's Ariel's generation too, but here's the thing, like for Ariel's generation, maybe not so much Caleb's, and I know there's only like a 5-year gap, but they're very entrepreneurial. They're very big risk takers. And I can appreciate that. Like, I wish I were that when I was younger, when I was in my 20s, when I was investing money. I wish I would have had that knowledge to go and do other things. Cause like in my 20s, I was investing in properties. Like, I was buying and flipping houses. I was buying houses. I'd never even see the house.
I love that.
And flip it before it was even built. When that boom went through, before the bubble busted. That was great. I get a phone call. Hey, we sold that house you bought 2 weeks ago. I was like, it's not done yet. Like, yeah, they bought it off the blueprint. I go, really? Yeah. Cool. How much am I making? Great. When are you closing? Better yet. Awesome. It was,
Send me a check. I'll sign it.
it was the craziest. It was the craziest thing, you know? But I wish that I were more entrepreneurial. Like, you know, you see a lot of these young people on social media doing the things that they're doing. Now they're the 1%ers. There's no doubt about it, but it's not the point. The point is that they're going after it. You know, they're taking a chance. They're investing in themselves and their confidence. Like, I did not have that confidence when I was younger. Their confidence is through the roof. You know, they don't have many worries. I was terrified of not being able to pay rent or not being able to eat. You know, I was terrified all the time. They're not, which is great. You know, I wish I were like that, but you understand where I'm coming. Like, I asked the point of no return, because at 25, you know, you're going to blink and you're going to be 30.
I just think you were asking me the wrong question.
What's the question I should have asked you?
The question you should have asked me is, at what point is it too far to have a proper direction?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I like, you need to have some sort of path carved out. I think that would have been really beneficial to me. Now I don't have any regrets. I've had really, really cool life, but to have a distinct path, yeah, I'd be more fiscally there now if I had. So hopefully Caleb will figure that out.
He needs a nice big push shove. I got to tell you that. I mean, it's one of those things, man. I mean, it's like, that's what I'm worried about is, you know, I told Ariel, I mean, even though she's got 1.5 years left of school, I told Ariel, I'm like, you know, you've got time to figure it out, but you don't have time to figure it out. Like, you have to start becoming financially responsible, you know, rule of thirds. If you buy into that, I do, you know, 1/3 for me, 1/3 for bills, 1/3 for savings. And you know, even if it's $20, you know, put 1/3 aside, but you got to save, you got to make money, because you're going to blink, you're going to blink, you're going to blink, you're going to blink, and you're going to blink and you're going to be 50 years old. You're going to be 60 years old. And you're looking back and you're going, man, I wish I would have, or God, can you imagine if I did? Or God, I wish I didn't. You know what I mean? Like, I do it all the time and say, oh, people go, I don't live with any regrets. Great. I mean, maybe I do, maybe I don't, but I know that when I look back over my past and the things that I could have done differently, even though the things that I did worked out in a way, if I would have done something differently, would they have worked out differently in a better way?
I don't think that's a regret, though. That's just a maturity. That's just a thinking through process.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
that's my take on it. I don't think it's a regret to question and do better tomorrow.
Well, we can ask our guest this question, because I think that would be a phenomenal question to ask our guest. I'm very, very excited, actually, to the point of being giddy, to have this gentleman on the Bailey Show podcast. The introduction, it can't be long enough. Founder of the largest personal injury law firm in the United States. That would be Morgan & Morgan. And a side note, a marketing genius, Mr. John Morgan. How are you, sir?
There he is.
It's good to see you.
I can't believe you're on this show. Like, I'm so excited to have you, sir. You have no idea. Do you remember, like, you want to go back to the 90s when it was, you know, before Morgan & Morgan, it was Morgan, Colin, and Gilbert. Do you remember me in the 90s with Doc and Johnny at XL 1067?
Yeah, you were 13 years old, and you were the Doogie Howser of disc jockeys.
Because that's how far, you know, I go back with your brand. We never had that personal relationship. So as a fan of people that have success, sir, I sat back for decades and watched you grow your law firm into the largest personal injury law firm in the United States. Did you ever in a million years, Mr. Morgan, think you would be that guy?
Well, call me John first.
Yes, sir.
I used to work at Walt Disney World, and everybody called Walt Walt. And I thought, you know what? If I ever get to be the boss, I'm gonna have everybody call me John. If we can call Walt Walt and Roy Roy, you can call me John. But no, you don't think about that. All you really think about, as you know, is just it's like pole vaulting. You want to get over this bar. And if you get over this bar, you're like, that's great. But then you want to raise the bar. We keep raising the bar as we go forward. Even though when we began, we thought if we could just jump this bar, that's all we want. But then you jump that bar and then you're young and you're like, is that all there is? And so you keep going forward. And then one day you wake up and you're like, how did that happen?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't plan it. It just
You have offices in 417 states.
Exactly, and North Korea, and so you don't really think about that. You just think about. I mean, look, when I got out of law school, if somebody had told me we're going to pay you $100,000 a year and tie it to cola, I would have been, give me the pen, give me the pen. You don't even imagine what's possible when you're at a certain age. Mm-hmm. But you just keep, you keep growing. I tell people all the time, life is really 90% luck. And people don't like to hear that. But the reason it is we take 1,000 left turns, we take 1,000 right turns, we take 1,000 U-turns. And sometimes we come to those traffic signals and we don't really know if we're going the right way. We just go right or we just go left. And sometimes you end up on the highway and sometimes you end up in a ditch. And that's just life. I met my wife because one day at the University of Florida, I decided to go to church in the middle of the week, which I don't do. I just went to clear my head and I walked in there that one Wednesday at 5 o'clock mass and met a person who became my wife, the mother of all my children, but that one day, if I don't go to that church that day, everything has changed. And that's what life is.
Yeah. Life is weird like that. I got advice some years ago from a very smart man, a very successful man by the name of Steve Koonin up in Atlanta, Georgia. Former owner of the Hawks and executive at Coca-Cola. And he took me out to lunch and he said, he told me the story because he's the one gets credited with inventing the $5 meal deal and saving Coca-Cola's account with Church's Fried Chicken. This is back in the 80s. But he says creativity, the short version of the story is creativity equals currency. And even in the field that you're in, John, of being a personal injury attorney and grinding in those early days, you always had that creative perspective on your business and developing a brand, even beating other firms to the punch in that bubble, in that arena. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. What you got to remember is when I first started, just a few years before that, there'd been a big Supreme Court case called Bates versus Arizona. What was Bates versus Arizona? It allowed lawyers to advertise. Until 1977, lawyers couldn't even advertise. So I got out of law school in 82. I was right there in the beginning where it was taboo for lawyers to advertise. But I've always had an entrepreneurial bent. I always see things, from an entrepreneur's point of view. And at that point in time in my life, it was one of those left turns or right turns. People who did advertise were usually the kind of the crumb bum lawyers, and the lawyers who didn't advertise were the cream of the crop. But I saw what was happening. I saw the train leaving the station. And so I made the decision with my wife. I remember we were at the beach one day talking about it. I said, look, this train is leaving the station. It's not what I thought I would be doing, but if I don't, it's eat or be eaten, because the crumb bums were getting all the cases. Mm-hmm. People were calling them and nobody thought they ever would, but they did. And I built my practice in the beginning. The lawyers who were advertising were referring me cases they didn't want, cases they didn't do, and, tough cases. But I got to get inside those firms, Whitaker and Kepke and Jacobs and Goodman, people who were referring me business, and I got to see what was happening. And I saw it very, very clearly, and I jumped in.
What was the first piece of advertising that you did? It obviously wasn't a billboard. Was it a bus stop or it wasn't
first ad I did is I didn't even go on it myself because I didn't want to be on TV myself. I was embarrassed to be, advertising. I had a buddy of mine who was a handsome guy, and it was Channel 6, and I'd gone to the bank and I'd borrowed $100,000. And that was it. It was like, here we go. And Channel 6, they had such faith in my ability to pay that they didn't run the ads until I paid them up front. Called COD. And so I went and did those ads, and my buddy Vance was in the commercials, and it was at Channel 6, and I started doing them. And then the Florida bar decided that if you're going to advertise, you had to do it yourself. And so then I had to go on myself, which I didn't want to do. And when I look at those ads now, I look like Beaver Cleaver grown up as a lawyer with, chubby cheeks, and, everybody used to call me Beaver Cleaver. It's kind of what I look like. And so I'm surprised now when I look back at those commercials that anybody called me, because I looked like I didn't belong.
Well, you, John, coined the phrase for the people.com. And when I sell sponsorship for my podcast, I actually always bring your firm up, because a lot of people don't realize this. And I was there working for Clear Channel at the time, iHeartRadio now. In the early 2000s, Clear Channel had changed the game in marketing, and they got rid of all the 60 seconds spots or commercials. And they went to premium 30s, and then they introduced these things called blinks or islands, 5, 10, 15 seconds. We were tasked as talent to be creative to get the message across from the sponsor or the advertiser. Very difficult to do. But there were two brands that mastered the art of what Clear Channel was doing at the time. One was a company that all you need to hear over and over again, the volume of da 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 da, and you wanted a hamburger from McDonald's. The other was Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com. All you need to hear was your voice, that tag, and you knew what it was. Do you remember those days in the early 2000s and branding that forthepeople.com? And what did that do for your firm?
Well, I'll tell you a story. Linda Bird was running Clear Channel at the time. She took me to dinner with her boss, the big boss from Texas, John somebody. He was the head of everything. Mm-hmm. And we went to this restaurant called the Mason Jar up on Wildmore Road.
Oh, yes.
Remember the Mason Jar? And so I'm in there with her big boss, and we're at dinner, and he says, "Tell me what you would like to have." I said, "Here's what I'd like to have. I'd like to have a spot between songs. Instead of being in a big stop set, Elton John, John Morgan, Billy Joel, click, click, click." I said, just 10 seconds. And so he goes back to Texas, and he calls me up. He goes, could you do them in 5 seconds? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, dog bite, Morgan & Morgan, for the people. And I finally said, I'd rather have 10. I said, what's the problem? He goes, my programming directors, I got to deal with them. I'm like, I thought you were the boss. What do you mean? I'm talking about 10 seconds for 24 hours. And he finally went with 5 seconds. So I, John Morgan, invented what they called at the time Adlets, Adlets. I forget John's last name. You'll know him.
Hogan.
John Hogan. And so Hogan says, and I said, he goes, what do you want? I said, look, I want to buy them all for the year since I invented them. It'd be only fair. And Linda Bird agreed. And so you are looking at the inventor of the Adlet. And the reason I liked it is because that moment, I mean, people move dials. People move dials. Talk radio is the dial people move the least, but most people move, like this. And so that's what I wanted, and that's what I got. And I inundated radio with Adlets for years and years and years. John Hogan.
Yeah, you changed the game. And again, and I did not know that story.
Yeah.
I just know how successful it was, with a marketing mind and actually being there and listening to it, and remember the first email that went out and what we're going to do and having to cut these different commercials. But I use you as an example to explain to sponsors for my network of the difference between traditional advertising and now digital /podcasting, because like you said, John, you told John Hogan and Linda Bird, which, by the way, I'm wearing my Alabama hoodie for Linda today during this conversation, knowing that she's going to watch it. But I use that as an example because, as you said, John, you purchased all of them for a year, and that's where volume comes into play for traditional advertising. You have to have volume. In the digital world, it's a little bit different, and volume is defined differently. But you mastered it, absolutely mastered it, and I've always been so just in awe how you did that. Was that a marketing, like any of your marketing, is it done through you and your brainchild, or do you have go-to people? Do you have a company? I think you own a company, right? A marketing company?
I used to own a company called Practice Made Perfect that we did ads for lawyers all over the country. The problem is I started moving into these different states and, potentially conflicting with my customers, my clients. So I sold Practice Made Perfect a few years ago. Once I really started expanding across America, but no, it's like I've just kind of had a feel for it. I've taken chances. I've done ads. I make fun of myself. A lot of lawyers are so full of themselves that they have trouble making fun of themselves. And I made a decision that humor sells, and that I would poke fun at myself sometimes, be serious sometimes. The key thing was to remember me, to remember my brand, remember my number. For the people was a big deal because back in the day, nobody really knew what a URL was. I went to a baseball game with some friends in Yankee Stadium, and they were all sitting with these devices called BlackBerries. And, who has a BlackBerry now? But I'm like, what do you all got there? I mean, I had nothing. And they were like, this is called a BlackBerry. What are you doing with it? And we're getting cases. They're coming in. I'm like, what is this? And so I came back and I started looking at the internet, to the URL. I'm like, you know what? Again, this train is leaving the station. And so I had to make a decision. What's my branding statement going to be? I wanted my branding statement to be my mission statement. So I came up with two names. One I was going to call it was justiceforall.com or forthepeople.com. Those were the two URLs that I had. I ultimately went with For the People because when I thought justice for all, I was worried that people could not all spell justice. Is it J-U-Z? I mean, but for, we can, get that. That's an easy one. People, a little bit harder, but easier than justice.
Yeah, Metallica might own. I was going to say Metallica might own that too already.
Metallica. Yes, exactly. And so I went with forthepeople.com. And so when I got it, I got it for free. It was back when, nobody knew, I didn't know what it was until I went to Yankee Stadium that day. I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't know what a URL was. I didn't, it was like, I'm like, if these people are that active during a ball game, I got to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that Yankee game was a very lucky day for me. Another right turn. I go to Yankee Stadium. I make that turn that day. I sit with the law firm Parker and Wakeman, and their URL was yourlawyer.com. I remember that, and I'm like, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
But I wish back in the day, I'd bought a bunch of URLs because I'd be a very rich guy. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if we knew what we know now then, and we were gobbling up URLs? Because there are people who became very rich selling URLs.
We were having this exact conversation just the other day.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, you wouldn't have gotten We the People for free out of this guy.
Ben and I, so I do 3 different shows 5 days a week on one podcast feed. And one of the shows that I do is with the bassist for the band Saliva, Brad Stewart. We had a guest on, his name's Scott Bartlett, and he's in a band called Saving Abel. That band, there's 2 versions of that band. When I was doing my research, I went to savingable.com, which is the other version with the original lead singer. Then there was a savingable.us for his version. And in my head, I'm going, because I buy URLs. I do exactly what you're saying. And I said, why isn't anyone bought? I go, why doesn't anyone own the real Saving Able? I mean, that's the go-to. So I looked it up and no one owned it. So I bought it. I was like, why would you not have it for $4.99? I buy people's names that I don't like, so they never can have their own.
I'll tell you something I bought years ago, and I still have not really, because I believe it could be the best URL in this space, in my space. And I bought it. I paid $3 million for it, but I've really not. And it's called injury.com.
Wow.
I've heard that story.
That's my, but I bought it late in the game from a guy out in Salt Lake City. And I'm starting to dabble with it right now. But, to me, that's one hell of a URL.
Yeah.
Injury.com. I have injury.org. And, but back in the day, can you imagine if you just had one day, 30 years ago, that you could go and say, okay, I'm going to pick out 30 URLs that I get.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you need. That's all you would need.
Part of Mark Cuban's initial success was buying broadcast.com. Window.com, sex.com, door.com, kitchen. Any one word URL is worth a lot of money. The guy you bought it from, did you go through outside of a broker, a URL broker, did you have a conversation with him? Did he kind of ask you questions on why you wanted it? Was he
Well, he wanted $7 million. No, we flew to Salt Lake City and met in person. And if you want to close the deal, you got to go close the deal. And but here's the thing about a URL: it's worthless unless you promote it.
Right.
And to promote it, you have to spend money. My dilemma with injury.com is, because I'm running some injury.com ads now, but my cost per acquisition is gigantic compared to forthepeople.com, because basically it's new. And so my question is, how much time do I want to spend in money? I mean, do I want to spend this much money for a case or this much money for a case? With injury.com, it's cost me more because people aren't familiar with it. So I'm in the process of figuring out how I'm going to use and utilize. And I own classaction.com. I own abogados.com. Now, Abogados.com is lawyer.com in Spanish. So for my, listen, the other thing I did for Linda Bird is years ago, I told her to take, what was the station? 10, whatever Rumba became. It used to be
Cool.
Was
or
it
no,
cool?
it was, it was cool. It was the oldies.
No, I think it was 101 point. It was not cool. It might have been oldies. Yeah.
It was an oldies station. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I tell
Big,
Linda,
big. It was big at one time.
So I tell Linda again, I said, Linda, let me tell you something. This station you got is dog shit. You need to turn it into Spanish. And I said, I'm going to tell you, Linda, you only got one chance because somebody else with the bad station is going to grab it. Whoever gets first. And she did it, and she bought, and they call it Rumba.
Yeah.
And that was another one of the John Morgan tips to Linda Bird. But I buy Spanish. I buy a lot of Spanish all over. I got a call center in El Salvador with 150 people a day. And everything from abogados.com goes to El Salvador, to my call center in El Salvador. But abogados.com is one incredible URL for my space.
That's crazy. We, Apple's coming out with these new AirPods they have that you can translate. And my wife and I we own a live ozone therapy spa here in Orlando. We're Central Florida's first and only ozone therapy spa. We have Hispanic patients, some that don't speak, and we have Japanese patients. I mean, we have a lot of different patients and that we just can't understand them. So my wife has been using Google Translate on her phone to understand them. But now we're putting these AirPods in and we can communicate with them. We actually just inserted an AI receptionist named after our daughter. So when those Spanish speaking people call, or those that don't speak English, the AI receptionist can actually talk to them and give them the information, which has become very, very helpful to that. I mean, it's a totally different ball game, whether you like it or not. However you feel about it doesn't matter. Business is business, and you want to super serve your audience, and it's a thing.
And you got to speak. Look, my slogan for Abogados is, and I forget what is the Spanish word for it, but it's Morgan and Morgan. We speak your language. But we do that in Spanish. So I forget but Morgan and Morgan, we speak your language. That's the money line for abogados.com. And then I took the Ricky Martin song, La Vida Loca.
Living La Vida Loca.
And I took that and I made words to that song about Morgan and Morgan. You ought to hear the jingle for abogados.com. And I mean, it is tremendous.
Have you ever, John, gotten an idea for Morgan and Morgan from somebody outside of your bubble that has worked?
Outside of my bubble, I basically tell people, look, here's what I'm looking to be. And I have a meeting every Tuesday with my creative team, because with social media, we're putting stuff out, all the time. You have to now. And in our creative, my meetings they're called Purple Cow meetings. Why do I call it Purple Cow? Because I tell my team and myself and you and whoever is like, here's what I want to do. Pretend that you went out to a field and there was 1,000 cows and they were all brown, and you touched one and you want to come back in 6 months and can you remember the cow I touched? Well, that'd be very difficult. But if there were 1,000 cows and one cow was purple and I touched the purple cow, you could come back in 100 years and pick out the purple cow. So what I am constantly trying to do with my ads is be the purple cow.
Mm-hmm.
To be the purple cow. What does a purple cow make you do? It makes you stop. It makes you look. It makes you remember. It makes you remember that cow, way back when. I do these John in 60s. And I did one about turkey a few years ago. And the whole thing was, turkey tastes like shit. And it's a terrible food. Why are we eating it? We get together.
It's foul.
It's foul. It's a buzzard. And then we take, bread and stick it up the turkey's ass. And then we get this stuff called cranberries. And none of this shit we ever order ever out in the restaurant. But one day a year we eat this shit food. So I did this John and 60 called Turkey Tastes Like Shit. Well, it's had millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of views. I was at the Kentucky Derby this year. 10 separate people passed me the Kentucky Derby and looked at me and go, "Hey, I agree with you. Turkey tastes like shit." Those are purple cow moments. Those are purple cow moments.
Yeah. How do you pick your creative team? Are they just hired within, or do you vet them pretty well?
I have them from within. I have, I have buyers. A lot of my buyers. Look, you remember Nancy Andreatis?
Sure.
She does all my radio now. Once Linda retired, I was free to go rob talent. And so Nancy Andreatis works there. Jen Weldon does my creative. I've got a team of people, but that is one part that I keep a very firm hand on the wheel. And, like we have, like right now for next year, I've got a campaign called Reasons. And it's going to be like this. Morgan & Morgan became the largest injury law firm in the world for a reason. Reason number 31. And then there's going to be these reasons. So we're working on that. We have this week, we have this WWE woman who's an influencer. I forget her name. She just won a big match last night. She beat John Cena last night. Liv, you ever heard of her?
Liv Morgan, yeah.
Yeah, Liv Morgan. So
Seems like you'd remember that one.
Yeah, I forgot the last name. And so this week on Wednesday, we're cutting an ad with her. And she's going to be body slamming people, and it's going to be, so that's an ad we're doing. My children and I we were in Arkansas a few weeks ago cutting an ad with John Daly and his son. Are you an Arkansas guy?
He's an Arkansas
alumni.
All right. Well, we were
Purple Cow.
Purple Cow. We were with the Dalys, and John Daly's son plays for Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went out there and cut these ads with John Daly and his son. And the ad is going to end with John Daly hits a bomb and screams out 4. And then the camera comes to me and I go, "The people." So we're always looking,
Can I suggest something? I got a suggestion. Suggest.
Go ahead.
You've got the stroke. You've got the money. You need to walk out Morgan Wallen to the stage. Morgan and Morgan to the stage.
Well, I'll tell you something about Morgan Wallen. I own a bunch of stuff up in Pigeon Forge, and I got a site in Gatlinburg. I mean, I got the best site in Gatlinburg, and his people are talking to my people about subleases in my space to build one. He's got a bar in Nashville that's kicking ass, but they want to put one down in Pigeon Forge. So we'll see how that goes.
But you know how he does the walk out to the stage with?
Yeah.
I mean, if you walk out with him, I mean, that's just, I mean, like you
Morgan
are
and Morgan.
You're not just obviously an attorney. You're a celebrity. People know you and your name. That just next level. Morgan and Morgan.
What we started doing recently, the last few years, we're doing a lot of big deal because we've moved to all the states. I mean, so we're a sponsor at Yankee Stadium. We're a sponsor at all the college campuses. We're in the mat for UFC. We're in the mat for WWE. So those are what I consider purple cows. This week we were on the floor for the Maui Invitational basketball. So we've really kind of expanded our reach because we have offices now and lawyers in all 50 states. And so, wherever I am, I'm advertising.
Will, your son's, your business is a family business, and your kids are there as well. You're going back to injury.com. Are they going to continue the John Morgan style of Morgan and Morgan, or are there any ambitions of doing a different style from their brainchild, where they could possibly use that injury.com and kind of separate from you a little bit?
Well, they might. The good news for them is they're young. My oldest is 42, and my youngest just got married. He got married in Maui a couple of weeks. I live in Maui half the year.
Yeah, I saw that. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. So he's 36. So they're grown. The thing about my 4 children is they've lived this business. I mean, they worked at the law firm as children. They were runners. They were in the call centers. They've signed up cases. They've been in my car. They've listened to my and so the 3 boys are all lawyers, and each one of them is very different. Each one of them brings a special talent to it. So I don't know what they'll do. I know that they probably wouldn't be as crazy in the ads as I am in the ads, because they're a little worried about what people think. I've always been more of a risk taker on things like that. I did a campaign a few years ago that everybody was shitting their pants over, which is called, I did a whole year called Size Matters.
I saw that. Yeah.
And, I mean, people are like, holy, what in the world are you doing? We know what that means. We know what you're trying to say. We know and I'm like, well, you have a filthy mind if you think that. Mm-hmm. And
I do.
But Size Matters was very, very, excuse the pun, big for our campaign. And so we keep coming back to Size Matter. I don't know if my children would have done Size Matters.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a risk.
It's a risk. There's risk, and some ads you get. There's people are always going to bitch about something. I mean, no matter what, somebody's like, what's the Pope's popularity? Like 80% approve of the Pope, 20% don't. Who are the 20 that don't like the Pope? But there's 20%. So whatever you do, you're going to have some pushback. But on the other side, you got to realize, but what's the end game going to be? And so I stuck with Size Matters. And it was really earth-shattering for our cases.
When I moved back to Orlando just over a year ago, I was in California for a year, in Atlanta prior to that. Of course, I would hear your ads up in Atlanta. I was like, that's crazy, and then California, I'm like, that's crazy. I moved back to Orlando. Orlando in the market, not only just radio, but also television, has become extremely oversaturated with just legal everything. There's more attorneys in Central Florida than I've ever even would imagine. Do you think that you, John, and Morgan started that trend and paved the way, opened the door for all these attorneys that are trying to be some cooler than the room when it comes to advertising?
Well, most of them used to work for me, and so I'm okay with it. But yeah, look, people, there's copycats for everything. And Orlando is probably the most competitive city. Orlando and Las Vegas are the 2 most competitive cities in America for legal advertising. And so it's, it's harder, it's harder, but look, there are people who advertise and that's all they do. I have a different business model. I get gigantic verdicts. Most of my competitors are not great lawyers. Most of my competitors take the last best offer. We don't. We try every week in America. We're on 150 to 200 dockets a week. We try a lot of those go to trial. We have these big results. And those big results are why we've been able to distance ourselves, because there's certain people that are settling a case for 400,000, and I'm taking that same case and getting 10 million. Because some of these lawyers, look, all lawyers are not the same. All doctors are not the same. Just because you got a guy in a white coat doesn't make him a great doctor. As a matter of fact, there's some real shit doctors out there. Most medical malpractice, there's, by the way, the third leading cause of death in America, medical malpractice. Google that one. But they're committed by the same quacks over and over and over and over again. Well, if there's quacks in medicine, there's quacks in law. And so I feel bad for these clients who pick the wrong lawyer, because those lawyers sometimes need the money worse than their client does, and they don't have the money to fight the insurance industry. And most of these lawyers, and I know them all, most of them never try a case. Well, look, if you're never trying a case and you're calling insurance company and saying, let's go have a gunfight, and they know you got no bullets, you're going to lose every time. So the reason I've separated myself is my results give me better margins. 30% of all of my business comes from former clients. 30% and rising. So the secret sauce to me is we're real lawyers who get real big results. This year we'll do almost $3 billion.
Jesus.
In settlements and verdicts.
That's crazy. Size matters, is what you're saying.
Size matters.
Size matters, without a doubt. I think I might have read this on your Facebook. I read it somewhere, like you once fired your son, and then you've also kind of said, when it's all said and done, you're not giving your money to your kids. You got to figure it out on your own. Is that correct?
Not completely. No, I feel like there's a new article out this week in a magazine called The Business Insider. And there's an interview of me in there, and they asked me, I build these attractions around America, and one of them is called Wonderworks, and it's the upside down house. And so what I told them in the article is, once I had my son Daniel was working at Wonderworks, and he was really kind of a sorry employee, and he was doing whatever he wanted and coming and going as he went. And I said, listen, man, you're fired. You're fired. And then I told him, and not only are you fired, but you're not leaving the house till you get a job, except to go to school. But so he gets a job at Boston Market as a cook. He comes back a week later and says, I quit Boston Market. I said, why? He said, they had me washing dishes. I said, think about that, Dan. The worst effing job in the place, and they got you doing it. That's what they think of you. That's who you are. You're the damn dishwasher at Boston Market. I said, no wonder I fired you at Wonderworks. I said, now what you got to do is, you're still never leaving the house except to go to school or to find a new job. And then he got a job at Firehouse Subs. And he became very, very good at making subs and showing up and being on time and saying yes, sir, and no, sir. And it was a learning lesson for Dan. But so, yeah, that's the time I fired one of my children.
And then you say to him, and you wonder how it works, just like that.
Listen, people, you cannot let your kids have an advantage because they have your love. And they take advantage of our love because we love them so much. But you can love them so much that you kill them, that you hurt them, that you enable them. I never gave my kids. A lot of people give their kids Mercedes and BMWs for their first car. I'm like, no way. Listen, you're going to get this 8-year-old Navigator, and you're going to pay for the insurance, and you're going to work. You're going to work. And you're not going to just lay at home. You're going to work on the weekends. And because, look, these kids can get out of control. And I drug tested my kids. When I thought they were smoking weed, I drug test them, and most of the times they failed it. I was right. They were smoking weed.
Aren't you a big proponent of like?
It gave him a good idea, Bailey.
Well, listen, I'm a big proponent of it. Here's how I come down on weed. I believe that weed fries people's minds early. I mean, look, we all know who the stoners are. And they're those guys that we went to high school with that kind of fried their mind. And when you talk to them now, they're like, hey, Bailey, how you doing? Everything is really in fucking slow motion. And they're fried. But then you get past those times and you get to the end of your 20s where you're not doing it every day. So I was very aware of that. I was very aware of that fragile brain. But yes, to my own drug use, every single night at about 9 o'clock, I go get my gummies.
Yeah.
And I take my gummies, and man, nobody sleeps better than John Morgan with my gummies because it's money.
Well, I got something for you. We can talk offline about this. I'll get to you. That might, substitute that gummy. That's not, has nothing to do with weed, or it's just all natural, but that's another conversation.
All right. I'm up for sleep. I understand why Michael Jackson took propofol, because, there's nothing worse than having trouble falling asleep. And there's nothing better than falling right to sleep. The only good thing about a colonoscopy is that propofol right before,
yes.
That's what I said when I got my test. That it was the best nap that I've ever. I was like, if I can take a colonoscopy every year, I'm in. That was the best nap ever.
But guess what? That's what Michael Jackson did. That's what that guy was shooting up his nose, was propofol, because it's the greatest way to fall asleep ever. I mean, and you wake up, after a colonoscopy, and you're like, wow, that was great.
That was the problem, though, is he was putting it up his nose. It's a whole different.
And the doctor was leaving the room and wasn't watching him, and
we were talking about this when you came on, John, and talking about the kids. My wife and I are empty nesters. We have a 25-year-old son and a 20-year-old daughter who will be graduating Alabama here in about a year. But my son, I had a conversation with him the other day. He still hasn't found his way. He's been doing a lot of jobs, nothing in the career sense. And I said, enough is enough. Your window is shrinking. Time is running out. You have already, in my opinion, lost 4 years that you could have put towards a trade or a career. And I think a lot of it is because you're lazy, because of your generation. Your primary is your video games in your time, when the 20s is when you should be grinding, so you don't have to do that when you're in your 50s and 60s. That was my speech. That was a short version. But the conversation Ben and I were having before he came on is, does your window close for opportunity in the job market when it comes to age? Do you think that if you have somebody that hasn't found their way, let's say in their 30s, that you need to pivot into a different direction because that window is closed?
I definitely do. I wrote a book for lawyers once and it sold a bunch of, it's still on Amazon, called You Can't Teach Hungry. And it's just inside of us. You either have a hunger or a passion for something. Some people don't have that hunger, and some people don't have that passion. And some people just aren't made for certain jobs. I tell people from time to time, you can't send a duck to eagle school. You got to realize, you got a duck or you got an eagle. Now look, ducks can do good stuff, but they're just not eagles. But yes, windows close. Here's what I believe. I believe that in your 20s is where you find yourself. And by the time you get to the end of the 20s, your rocket ship is either headed like this, headed like this, headed like this, or headed like this. There's the trajectory. By the time you get to your late 20s, the rocket ship starts taking off in a direction. By the time you are 35, it's over, it's done. There's very little hope for anything better. So, but how do you get somebody motivated? And, and look, you don't know if they're doing a lot of weed, because one thing that will take motivation away is weed.
He does a lot of it.
Well, if he does a lot of weed, that is going to be a decelerant for his life. That's why I was so hard on my kids with the weed. But marijuana takes away ambition and drive. And so the time to be doing marijuana is when you're 69 and set, not when you're 25 and loaded. But
yeah,
and it's hard to motivate somebody, because certain people are just born a certain way, and then because of lifestyle, it becomes worse, and they don't believe it's going to be bad, because all they need is a burrito and a game.
Yeah, I tell them to save like you're poor, or spend like you're poor and save like you're rich. Meaning, like a stripper spends her tips out of her pocketbook. When that money's done, she just goes back and dances again. You don't want to live that way, because there's going to be things that come up that you're not going to have the money for. And if you have to think that I never had a safety net for the most part. Unfortunately, like you talk about, the kids have the advantage with love. They know worst case scenario, there's a safety net. But if you go through life not knowing that there's a safety net, then it changes your way of thinking. Not to say I don't have regrets in my life or career, but you make sure you have money in case the worst case scenario happens. Right.
Well, listen, look, think about this. In America, 40% of America, 40% does not have $400 in case of an emergency. In America, 40%, 60% live paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. And then there's a whole other group that's living not paycheck to paycheck, but, with one eye open, like 6 months worth of savings. It's a very thin line between, doing okay and being homeless.
Yeah.
And you don't think it can ever happen to you, but when you don't have a safety net, when you don't have anywhere to turn, it's a terrible feeling. And look, I grew up poor. And the great thing about growing up poor is you don't ever forget that taste. You don't ever forget that feeling. And the feeling of being powerless and hopeless and helpless, when you look around, you got nowhere to turn. It's a terrible feeling. Now, our kids, they still got our basements, and they got our spare bedrooms, and they got their mother's cooking still. And so there's a whole group of what they call beta boys out there. And the boys have been, the women are kind of soaring, and there's a whole new generation of boys called beta boys who are just, the women are passing them up.
Yeah.
And I don't know the explanation for it all. I think a lot of these kids were coddled too much by their parents. They weren't forced to work. I mean, my kids was very simple with my children. If you're not working, you're not leaving the house except to look for a job. And that's just not negotiable.
Did you have them work in college as well?
During college, no.
Yeah.
But every college break. Now, look, my kids had bright futures. So their tuition, everything was paid. I mean, they made good grades in high school. But as soon as over, one Christmas, they came home, and I said, "Hey, have you guys got your schedule for Christmas at WonderWorks?" And Mike said, "Daddy, nobody at Bishop Moore's working over Christmas." And I go, "That's just not true." That's just not true. And Matt goes, "No, nobody at Bishop Moore's working." I go, "Look, that's just not true." And they're both at once. "Yeah, Daddy, yes, it is." And I go, "Listen, here's why it's not true. You two motherfuckers are working." Okay, you two motherfuckers are working, and you two go to Bishop Moore. I said, now here's the good news. You can work from 8 to 5. You can work from 12 to 9. You can work from 5 to 2 because I own the place. And you don't have to work on Christmas because I own the place. But you too are working 40 hours during Christmas. And so they didn't like it. They didn't like it. So they got in their 8-year-old Navigator and took their asses down I-4 to WonderWorks on I-Drive. And I said, look, here's another bonus. If you got any friends that want to work, we need workers over Christmas. Bring me a couple of buddies and you can save on gas going out there. But if you don't do that with your children early, if there's no consequences early, if there's not, rules early, then it's not going to happen later.
Yeah, when my daughter comes home, she'll work at Alive at the spa, and I went in there one day because I'm not there every day, but my wife is, and she wasn't doing anything, just sitting there on the phone. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "I'm on my phone." I said, "You're working." I was like, she goes, "Yeah." I go, "That's not work. If you can lean, you can clean." I said, "Get up, put the phone away, pick up a mop, do something. Just, I'm not like you. Let's put this into perspective. I'm paying, doesn't matter how much money for you to look on Instagram right now. Tell me how that makes sense." What are you doing?
Well, she got the advantage. Her boss loves her.
Right. Exactly. It always comes.
Her boss loves her. You can't, you would think of how you would deal with someone doing that wasn't your daughter.
Yeah.
Because, so that's the tough part. Look, a guy told me a long time ago that our children are one friend away from total disaster. One friend away. And in my children's life, I separated them from two different, I separated Matt from somebody and I separated Kate from somebody. And I just made a decision that this kid was going to be a problem for my kid. And I separated them. And as I watched life go by, I was correct. In the mother of the boy that I separated Matt from calls me up and says, "I hear that my son is not allowed to play with your son." I said, "Look, they can do whatever they want at school, but I made a decision that I believe your son is a bad influence." And she goes, "Well, I believe your son's a bad influence on my son." I said, "Hey, good news. You won't have to see him over there anymore because he ain't coming over there anymore." And the very kid that I was worried about ended up doing a little time in jail for selling drugs. I mean, I knew what I was seeing. And so it was hard to do, to separate a child from their friend, but we see things as parents and we can't love them so much that we destroy them.
Yeah. I tell that to my wife. I'm like, cause she's 10 years younger than me. So she's part of a different generation. And I said, some of the things that she's that friend to the kids kind of parent, and I'm a stepfather. So that's another thing that comes into play, but I'm like, you can't handicap your kids. Hard love is not a bad thing. If you're easy and you don't give them the truth and you're not honest with them about what's going on, you don't look healthy. What's going on? Why are you're eating too much? You're not exercising. Like, honesty is always the best policy.
I kept listen. Well, first of all, if you want to be the cool mom or the cool dad, you're fucking your kids. I remember one time, Dan, the one that got fired from WonderWorks, was going off to University of Florida, and he's walking out the door. I said, "Dan," I said, "I feel like you've been smoking dope over the Christmas holiday." He goes, "No, I haven't." I go, "Well, look, I think you have." And I said, "The good news is I got a drug test set up back in the pool room bathroom." I said, go pee in the cup and we'll see." And he looks at me and I said, "Now, I want to tell you how this is going to go down, Dan. If you fail the test, you lose your car for the semester. If you want to admit it before you fail the test, you're going to lose your car for a month." I said, "I know you're going to fail the test. I've smelled it. I know you're going to fail the test. You just got to make a decision what you want to do right now. Do you want to take the test or do you want to confess?" He just looked at me. There was this standoff. I wasn't blinking. He wasn't blinking. And then he reaches in his pocket, takes his keys, throws me the keys. I grab the keys. I go, okay, man, that's a month. I said, listen, I will show up in Gainesville. I will continue to drug test you until you're out of law school, because I'm not going to let you fry your brain.
That's great. Yeah, I subscribe to that. It's phenomenal. Look, John, before we wrap this up, I do have one question regarding all encompassing your life and your career. Is, from the outside perspective, you see people of your success and you just think everything is great. Life is always good, and it always has been. But you're human just like the rest of us. We all make mistakes. We all have possibly some regrets. What is business-wise, not personally, but business-wise, what is your biggest regret? Something that you would go back and change in a heartbeat?
Well, you don't, when you get with early partners, they're usually just people that you knew. And they were nice people, but they weren't your part. They weren't people that were going to, I look at it like a rowboat. We're all in the rowboat and we're rowing, but some of them aren't rowing. Mm-hmm. The regret I would have is there's certain partners in the early days that I brought on, that I ultimately bought out, that were really nice people, but just did not have my work ethic, were not rowing as hard as I am. But there's no way to tell. There's no way to tell. I guess if I had a regret, because you're never going to know who's going to be great and who's going to be not. But the regret I have is when you know that something is not working, you need to take action then. My regret is because you can't figure out who's going to be great and who's not going to be great. Or Tom Brady, Tom Brady was the 7th draft choice. Mm-hmm. He wasn't supposed to make it, but he becomes the greatest ever. So we just don't know. But the regrets I have are the fact that things that I knew about and let go on too long. I should have bought these partners out earlier. I should have let this person go sooner. I should have separated myself from this partner sooner, because that time that you lose, one time when the Gators fired Ron Zook, they fired him right in the middle of the season. And Jeremy Foley was the athletic director, and he said something that was great. Whatever you know you're going to do someday, just do today. Mm-hmm. So my regrets are not so much of the people that I brought in or the decisions I made, but the fact that I didn't carve the cancer out, cut the cord, break away sooner, because I lost all of that time.
But you learned something from it. And I always say there's nothing negative that can happen if you learn something from it. So you're right. So from what I learned from it is every single year we have meetings throughout all my organizations. We call it the ABC meetings. And the managers say, they identify the A's in their organization, or their, and an A is somebody that we can never lose. An A is an all-star we can never lose. Then we identify the B's. The B's are people who can become A's, maybe. And then some B's are just B's. B's I look at like, offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. They're valuable because you can't open the holes without, so they're valuable. And then there's the C's. Like, see you later.
And then we identify the C's, and then we talk about the C's, and then we have this discussion, this final discussion. Would we hire this person for this job today, knowing everything we know about him now? Mm-hmm. And if the answer is no, and they're a C,
gotta go. See you later.
See you later. So we're at that season right now. We're doing the ABC meetings right now, and there will be people that go. But I'll tell you about the people that go. I'm fairly generous with severance. I try to go in and tell them, because I come from a background where my dad got fired a lot, and there is nothing worse for a family than a mother or father losing their job. So what I try to do with these people is say, look, this isn't working out for you. We're going to put a severance together for you, but in the next month or so, go find a job. I tell them it's easier to find a job with a job.
With a job.
And the truth is, we're doing them a favor long run, because they don't like it. You can tell they don't like it. People who don't like their job cannot be good at a job. And so you're right. So what I learned from hanging on too long is what needs to be done today needs to be done today. Not
so you allow these people to still work for you for amount of time while they're finding it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I wish radio adopted your mindset.
Well, radio is brutal. I mean, they not only fire you, but they hold you to your non-compete clause. It's like, you're fired, and by the way, you can't go over to Cumulus because I just fired you. I'm like, what? And I've always thought, I always thought that was bullshit. But look, in radio, listen, the fact that Johnny Magic, today or yesterday was his birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And, the fact that Johnny is still hanging on. Me and him owned Taboo together downtown years ago.
I remember
when you all were doing your stuff. And look at Doc. Doc made a huge mistake in radio. I mean, he should have just shut his mouth. But Doc got so full of himself that he self-destructed. And that's what happens with success. With success, we become arrogant. Mm-hmm. And I love Doc. But then he all of a sudden he's over at K92, which was like a fish on a bicycle. I mean, he did not belong at K92. Mm-hmm. But Doc and Johnny were, and look, Bo Rhodes, Bo and
Russ, yeah.
Russ and Bo wouldn't go to rehab. Linda wanted to put him in rehab. He said, I don't need rehab. All right. And look, Russ is still going, and Bo's selling cars. Yeah. And and Bo's a genius. He is a funny dude. Mm-hmm. And but the business you all are in is brutal because it's ratings, and now money because there's fewer listeners. So
yeah, I don't think my career is. I think I'm good now. I mean, 30 years, and I'm enjoying this podcast world. And even though, I do have a relationship with radio with this podcast, going back to doing mornings or the grind or the emails or I had a really bad experience in California with a company that would ever make me not do something for my family, but as a business owner with Alive and the podcast and possibly some other opportunities. And I don't think radio wants me anymore, at least my style in this market. So it's just too much. It's just too much. Look
at Bubba. I mean,
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was number 2. He was, he was in Howard Stern's wedding, I think.
Yeah.
But radio's in for a tough slog right now. When I live in Maui, and my neighbor owns a company called Pacific Media. He's got 17 radio stations, and it's not easy. It's just not easy. And so the smart people like you have pivoted to podcasting, which is the new thing. I mean,
yeah. I was talking to Linda about this the other day, when we were up in Alabama, and I said, my vision of radio is, I think podcasts, and I had pitched her this idea before I left Orlando in 2013, is to put podcasts on the radio. And there's actually a company that exists now that does that. And it's growing. Like this podcast is on 2 radio stations. It's pennies on the dollar, no reload, no insurance. I mean, you're self-contracting people that you're paying 6+ figures just a year prior for the same content. That those people are out of work and they just don't want to deal with your bullshit anymore. The company's bullshit. The only thing that these companies will have to get over is the IP, address that, where they're able to do other things and own other things. That's where radio keeps us.
I think your idea is smart because it's almost the first cousin of talk radio. I mean, what's the difference between, what was the guy that you all used to have he was great. What was the guy on 104.1 in the afternoon? Jim Phillips.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was kind of a podcast before podcast, he's kind of a
great, amazing
quasi-podcast, but I think what you're saying is genius, quite frankly, because what's the difference between talk radio and podcasting? Not much, except format. It's still talking, but podcast is more interesting because you're just not hearing Jim, and some crackpots coming in. You can still have crackpots come into the podcast, but yeah, I think, listen, like me, I'm the crackpot of the day today, but I think you're onto something because especially if you have a station like what Rumba took over, like, what do you have to lose?
Right.
What do you have to lose? Just take one block, take a 4 to 8 block or a 5 to 8 block and just make it a podcast. And let it and see what happens. If you got such low numbers anyway, what difference does it make? I mean, now you got that Jana, the other Alabama girl, Jana Sutter.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She's kind of, sort of like that. I mean, she's not a podcast, but she's sort of like a podcast, and she's got her following.
Well, the podcast style, in which I've learned over the last 5 years, is a lot different than the radio style, even though I believe if you have a radio background, it benefits you to learn the podcast style, if that makes any sense.
No, it does.
The podcast on the air, outside of it not following all of radio's PPM Bible rules, and that's where kind of Linda said, she goes, the problem is, you're not doing the resets and the re-ups and this and this and that. And I go, like, how this podcast is positioned and how I explained it to the radio stations that we're on is that you're joining it in progress, because the idea is to come back and listen to the full episode. That's the concept. What's the difference? Who cares? There's too many rules in radio and none of them have been right. Like, you've got to break the mold at some point. And if it's all about money and AI in the future, you guys I can go on and on about
what they need, what the Lindas and the John Hogan ain't there anymore, but there's a concept that I subscribe to. It's called first principle thinking. What first principle thinking is, it started with Aristotle. Aristotle is like this. You take assumptions and you deconstruct them. The assumptions are radio has got this format and these are the stop sets and this is how it works and this is how it has always worked. So this is how it must always be, was and ever will be, like our prayer in Catholic school. But then you go first principle thinking. Elon Musk is a first principle thinker. He goes, look, he wants to build a rocket ship. They said it's impossible to build a rocket ship. Why? The rocket itself costs $65 million. So it's too expensive. So he starts to think about it. He goes, well, let's take that assumption, 65 million. Let's deconstruct it. Let's say we're not going to assume that's correct. And let's see and then he figures out, you know what I'll do? Instead of buying a rocket for 65 million, I'll build one for 6. Thus SpaceX, Tesla, the car, electric car. It has to have batteries, has to have plugs everywhere. That's impossible. There's not enough lithium for it all. He goes, no. Let's see. Let's deconstruct these assumptions and then come up with first principle thinking. What you're talking about right now is first principle thinking. You're thinking about taking all these long-held assumptions in the radio business from all the smart people who, because it ever will be, and deconstructing it and saying, let's build SpaceX. Let's build Tesla. Let's build a tunnel from Vegas to Los Angeles. Let's build Uber.
Mhm.
Think of the first principle thinking from Uber. People go, it won't work. Why? Because the taxi's got all the permits. You can't run Uber in a city because they don't have the permits. The first principle thinking, Travis said, no. And these disruptors, whether it's Uber or Airbnb couldn't be but the first principle thinking said, let's deconstruct that.
Mhm.
That's what you're doing right now. And I'm going to tell you, I'll bet you that one day what you're saying is going to happen. And you're going to pull this up from, December, whatever we're going to go. You remember the time that John Morgan and I had this very conversation.
Oh, he will.
And listen, and listen, because here's the thing. I wrote a book called You Can't Teach Vision. And it goes like this. There are visionaries that have all these ideas. Steve Jobs is a visionary. Michael Dell's a visionary. All these visionaries, but so are a lot of other people. There are visionaries, and then there's vision makers. And it's hard to be a vision maker because you got so many vision blockers. Linda Bird telling you, no.
Mhm.
It won't do that way. It can't happen that way. Why? Because it just doesn't work.
Mhm.
And what I would say to that is this: those visionaries, what they were thinking about was no to most people. When my kids were little, I used to go after mass. We'd go to Perkins and they color with crayons, and the crayons were rolling on the floor. And I spent half the time on the floor picking up the crayons and putting it back on the table for breakfast. And I said to my wife one day, I said, what somebody needs to do is invent a crayon that doesn't roll. I had a vision. I was a visionary. One day we go to another Perkins and we sit down and they bring the crayons, but they're triangles. They just lay these triangles on the table. And I pick the triangles up. I go, motherfucker. This was my idea. Ultima, do you remember when I said that we need to build? Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember. I was a visionary.
And no one ever believes you when you tell them that, right?
No.
It's crazy.
That's why Bailey keeps receipts.
Let me tell you something, John.
Yeah.
So before, this would have been about 2012, I was living in Baldwin Park. And I was at Real Radio at the time. And I think I'd gotten home I was doing middays and I was going over to the pool for a little bit. And I'm walking out of my house and I've got my towel, got a bottle of water. I got my cell phone. I was like, I don't want to take my wallet. And on my kitchen counter, I took my credit card and my ID out of my wallet. And there was a rubber band there, just random rubber band. I took the rubber band and I wrapped it around my credit card and my ID around my phone. And I'm walking towards the pool from my condo in Baldwin Park. And I stop halfway through and I look at my phone. I go, oh my God. I went back into the condo and I drew out this idea to have a pocket that you could clip on to your cell phone case. And I go on the air with it, which was dumb, but I go on the air that I had a listener that was an inventor. He invented these hurricane shutters. He, I guess, did pretty well. So we get together and he designs it and actually put together some prototypes. Anyway, I ended up moving to Atlanta, taking a job up there. And my wife and I are in a party city a couple years ago. Or no. Well, there was a company that had promo items. And they gave us this pocket that you could put on your phone that was adhesive. And that did not exist when I came up with that idea. I can tell you that right now. I was like, oh my God, why did I not follow through with that? So that
was your crayon moment.
Yeah. So later down the road, I did eventually end up inventing something. I am an inventor. It did not take off like that. Yeah. But I still had that feeling of inventing something tangible. So I know what it's like to market it, to get it out there. That's a whole different world.
Listen, it's the visionaries they've all had I remember one time I'm sitting out in Maui next to this guy who lived had a place at the Montage. He's from Michigan or something, and obviously very wealthy. I said, how'd you make all your money? He goes, well, I invented something. I said, what'd you invent? You ready for this? The Glad trash bag, deodorant trash bags. I'm like, I said, like, tell me what this was. He goes, I said, were you in the, no, he goes, I just got sick of smelling my trash. It always smells so bad. And I thought, what if you deodorize the trash bags? And I said, this guy, so every deodorized trash bag in America, you get a piece of it. He goes, every single one.
God almighty.
But he was a vision maker. He was a visionary first. There's no telling how many vision blockers were telling him, you're going to put perfume in no. Or you're going to go take a mortgage out on the house. No. Keep your job. No.
But he had to glad hand a lot of people for that. So.
The glad hand.
There you go. Very witty.
Well, look, John, thank you so much for your time, sir. I was so excited when you responded to me and agreed.
No, I remember you from the old days, and I thought, you know what? For old time's sake, I need to do this Sunday afternoon, so I'll put a hat on and go watch my football after this.
I cannot thank you enough, sir. I'm such a fan, and as a creative guy, as a visionary and a vision maker to an extent, I see what you have done, and throughout the decades has always inspired me.
Thank you.
To continue to do those things. So thank you very much. Enjoy your football. Thank you. I'm going to reach back out to you because of that sleep thing. I got something for you. All right. I'll let you know what it is. Okay.
All right. Go Bucks.
There you go. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, John.
John Morgan, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. That was awesome.
That's a good interview.
That was great. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm just such a fan, such a fan of what he's done creatively with his brand. It's just, went a lot
of brilliance that we just talked to. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up. Like, share, follow on all social media, please. JasonBailey.com. Get all that information. This is a Freebay episode. There's more of where this came from. So there's 3 shows for the BS each and every week. 2 are sub. This is not one of them. Please subscribe, JasonBailey.com, if you don't mind. I'd appreciate it. No rhyme or reason for guests and what days of the week. So, John Morgan could have been on a Tuesday or Thursday episode. So I don't know. Anyway, Ball Badger, you got anything before we get out?
I think it sucks that only one company is allowed to make the game Monopoly.
Oh, that's good. I like that. That's pretty good. That's good. All right, look, have yourself a great, safe rest of your day. Appreciate the support. If you're going to be doing some drinking, I understand, I get it. If you've had too much, please don't get behind the wheel of a car. I've lost way too many friends like that. And sure the shit, don't be posting stuff on social media or you will lose friends like that. All right? We'll talk to you soon. And bye.
Hey, good looking. It's the Bailey Show podcast. JasonBailey.com. It's a website.
Okay, this episode's over. Goodbye. 3 different shows, 5 days a week, 1 feed, details, and to subscribe, JasonBailey.com.